The albatross, symbol of the open sea, a creature of reverence and superstition, a legendary bird that few of us mere mortals will ever get to see. As described in the famous poem Rime of the Ancient Mariner, seafarers have long considered the albatross a bird of good omen. They were believed to be the reincarnated spirits of dead sailors, searching the oceans for their lost friends. And to kill such a bird would bring about the ruin of both ship and men. Now, in a reversal of fortune, seabirds are being slaughtered in vast numbers by the mariners of longline fisheries, and albatrosses are heading for extinction. The question is, can we still save these lone spirits of the high seas? Albatrosses spend most of their lives roaming the open ocean. Perfectly attuned to wind conditions. With a wingspan of up to 3.5 meters, they glide in perpetual elegant motion.
One of the most spectacular things about albatrosses is their reputation as ocean wanderers, and until very recently, although you always saw an albatross behind your ship, there was no real idea whether it was the same one, how far they travelled. The ability to use satellites to track these birds showed for the first time that birds feeding a chick can make a foraging journey of 10 or 12 or 15,000 kilometres. Phenomenal journeys.
These nomads of the oceans can remain out at sea for as long as 5 years, before again returning to the same remote islands on which they were born. Nesting is the only time they spend on land. There are 24 different species of albatross of varying size, habits and plumage. Every year, or in the case of large albatross, only every second year, adults rendezvous with their partners at the same nest site. They have elaborate courtship dances, and once mated, they are likely to remain faithful to their mate for life. At each breeding attempt, the pair stays just long enough to hatch and raise a single chick. An endeavor that can take them 6 to 11 months.
Once they finish breeding, we've recently shown that they make even more spectacular journeys, and we've had grey-headed albatrosses going twice right round the globe, up to 100,000 kilometres, simply in the period between 2 successive breeding attempts. Quite phenomenal journeys, and that's one of the roots of the problem, that by doing so they come into contact with a whole variety of commercial fisheries, not just in their breeding grounds, but on their migration journeys and in their wintering grounds in other parts of the Southern Ocean.
Commercial fisheries have been using the longline fishing technique since the 19th century. In the late 1960s, it became widely used in response to the increasing demand from upmarket restaurants for high-quality, high-value fish. Later, It gained further popularity as a result of a United Nations ban on excessively long drifting nets. Ever since, longline fisheries have increased significantly throughout the world's oceans. In broad terms, a long line consists of a main rope to which many branch lines are attached. This line can be anything up to 130 kilometers in length. Attached to it are literally thousands of baited hooks. An estimated 1 billion hooks are set this way annually by longline fleets in an effort to catch some of the most lucrative fish in the world. Aboard these floating factories, the catch is immediately processed in preparation for export. Fish are cleaned, packed, and the innards discarded overboard. This unwanted offal attracts the notice of many creatures. And seabirds are opportunists and scavengers by their very nature. They have been following ships and feeding on galley wastes since the first sailing ships ventured into the Southern Ocean. So, unsurprisingly, when the line is being set, waiting seabirds will try and snatch the bait before it sinks beyond their reach. But concealed inside these tempting meals are deadly hooks. And inevitably, birds become impaled on them. The sinking long line then draws them underwater. Where they slowly drown. Each year, hundreds of thousands of albatrosses, petrels, and other seabirds are killed as unintended bycatch in this manner. At present, it's the most critical problem facing seabirds globally, with 22 species, of which 17 are albatross, in danger of extinction. Various organizations have been campaigning for years in an effort to stop this needless slaughter.
BirdLife International Seabird Program and the Save the Albatross campaign is a global effort using BirdLife's partners and its resources to find a global solution for what is a global problem. There are solutions out there to reduce seabird bycatch. We have to focus on the various aspects using scientific information, technical data available, using the knowledge of the fishermen, and using the power of international legislation. Only if we use these in combination can we find a solution to reduce and hopefully eliminate seabird bycatch.
To assess the threat, scientists are conducting long-term research at their study colonies on breeding islands in the sub-Antarctic. By ringing the birds, they monitor their annual survival rate and the health of the population. Global tracking information is being pooled on a central database, providing detailed information about seabird migration patterns.
The information we have from albatrosses and petrels shows that these birds aren't just using the ocean on a random basis. They're actually predictably targeting certain areas of the ocean. By analyzing all this data in a single system, we will for the first time be able to identify the areas of the ocean that are utilized most intensively by albatrosses, and consequently where they will be at most risk from longline fishing.
At Cape Town University, further research is conducted on seabird carcasses recovered from longline vessels.
These two white-chinned petrels were killed on toothfish fishing vessels operating around the Prince Edward Islands, the South African subantarctic islands. We've got a small study colony of white-chinned petrels on Marion Island. We've banded only a couple of hundred birds, and this is the second one that's been killed. With the white-chinned petrels, about a half or two-thirds are actually hooked on the wing or the body. They're diving down as the bait is being set, but there's lots of hooks flying around in the water, and so they very often get hooked up on the wing, just accidentally get tangled up and dragged down. And this bird obviously wasn't hooked by swallowing a hook, he just got hooked in the neck here. And we'll just have a quick look inside the stomach, see what it's been feeding on. And there's a nice chunk of bait that's been nicely cut by the auto baiting machine. So he's managed to pick up some bait before he got hooked. Here we have a nice adult black-browed albatross. You can tell he's a black-browed really easily. It's the only albatross with this all sort of orangey yellow bill with a pinkish tip. And it's an adult because it's got that bill colour. The juveniles start off with a slate grey bill with a black tip. And they also have a fully dark underwing, whereas once they're adult, they have mostly pale centre to the underwing. They're annual breeders. The vast majority of the population breeds on two islands in the southwest Atlantic Ocean, just east of South America, South Georgia and the Falklands. And the Falkland Island birds seem to move up the east coast of South America, so they get killed off Brazil and Argentina, Uruguay. And the South Georgia birds leave the colonies and come straight across to Africa, where they forage, particularly at trawlers off Cape Town and the southwestern part of the country. But this guy has been unfortunate enough to get caught on a tuna line. You can see here the nice monofilament trace. The hook was baited with an entire squid. You can see the size of the gape. They can take very large prey items, no problem swallowing even big tuna hooks like this. And instead of catching a tuna, it's ended up catching an albatross. The worst thing that you can kill are adult birds for various reasons. If you kill adult birds, obviously there's a chance that they are breeding at the time, and that has an impact immediately on that breeding attempt. If it's early in the breeding season, certainly during incubation or small chick period, that the partner is unable to rear that chick alone.
With a potential lifespan of 65 years, albatrosses are long-lived and have a slow reproduction rate. Breeding conditions are difficult, so couples invest all their time and effort in raising a single chick in a sometimes hostile environment. Because they form such strong pair bonds, if one is killed, its mate will not breed again until another bond is formed. Finding a replacement partner may take several years, and any further breeding attempt even longer. Considering these factors, the killing of only a few birds can have serious long-term implications for the survival of the species.
What is of particular concern to us is that many of these species have very small breeding populations. 10 of the species have populations of less than 10,000 breeding pairs, and one of these species only has 13 breeding pairs left on this planet. So you can see that the population dynamics of these species are very finely balanced, and what might be perceived as a small number of deaths due to longline fishing by the fishermen might actually be enough to tip the balance and cause these species to become extinct.
To regulate the fishing industry, international agreements have been drawn up which pave the way towards seabird conservation.
CAMLAR stands for the Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. It's a regional fisheries management organisation. In other words, it's an organisation responsible for managing a fishery in a huge area of the Southern Ocean. And it's a very, very important organisation because right from the outset it took an ecosystem approach to managing resources. So not just managing the fish stocks, but managing the whole of the marine environment, including the seabirds. Since the mid-1990s, CAMLAR has required all the vessels licensed to fish in the CAMLAR area have required those vessels to apply a certain set of technical measures to reduce the seabird bycatch. They have reduced the bycatch in CAMLAR waters by about 90%.
Under international agreement, these bycatch avoidance or bird safety measures are increasingly being used by fishing fleets from various nations in their own territorial waters. These methods are relatively inexpensive and benefit both birds and the fishing industry. The most effective of these is simply towing a bird-scaring line behind the vessel. Called Tory lines, they have long plastic streamers tied to them that flap in the wind. This disturbing motion keeps birds away from the back of the vessel where the baited line enters the water. Other easy solutions include setting the line at night when birds like the albatross do not feed. Also, tying enough weights to the fishing line and using thawed instead of frozen bait makes the line sink faster and out of reach of the birds. Alternatively, several modern inventions are in development, including an underwater chute that enables fishing vessels to release the bait below the water. Yet, these measures only become truly effective when used willingly by every longline fisherman from every nation.
These are birds which cross international boundaries, and these are birds especially which go onto the high seas. And many of the fisheries which affect these birds are high seas fisheries, and that means those fisheries are taking place outside the realm of national jurisdiction. So a country could protect its albatross on its breeding islands or in its own territorial waters, but that won't help a lot if the other half of the bird's life is halfway around the globe fishing in open waters where it's taken by fishing boats from another nation. So really, to work towards their conservation at the species level needs the concerted effort of a number of countries, and getting the fishing industry and the fishermen themselves involved is absolutely critical.
In an effort to promote a positive interest in seabirds, one of South Africa's leading fisheries has launched identification posters for fishermen's use.
Well, you know, there are legal measures in place which protect the seabirds, but without the buy-in of the fishermen and the people who spend time at sea, it's very difficult to enforce these. I think if we can educate or increase the knowledge of fisherfolk and people that go to sea, let them understand the diversity of seabirds and give them an idea of how fragile these populations are and what the life cycles are all about, we'll have a much better chance of protecting the birds in the long term.
Unfortunately, these efforts are not enough to get the albatross off the hook.
We reckon that globally there are probably about 300,000 seabirds killed a year in longline fisheries. Probably 100,000 of those are albatrosses, and the bulk of those will be taken by pirate vessels. There's no doubt about it. They are the biggest problem on the seas at the moment.
These pirate fishing vessels are illegal and unregulated, operating outside any current laws and agreements. Not only are they stealing global fish resources, they also operate with total disregard for the number of seabirds they kill.
When you go to fish in an area like the CAMLAR region, you apply for a license to fish, and then you are subject to all the rules and regulations of CAMLAR. So you take an observer on board the vessel, you apply all your mitigation measures, you reduce seabird bycatch to virtually zero if you do everything right. So those are the good guys. The pirate vessels are ones which completely flout the rules. They're not interested in getting a license. They just rove the oceans fishing illegally wherever they can. There's huge profits to be made out of fish these days. I mean, a single Patagonian toothfish can fetch thousands of dollars. A single bluefin tuna has fetched $100,000 on the Japanese market. So it's big bucks, and there's lots of incentive to cheat. Most pirate vessels are also flag of convenience vessels. These are vessels which really are flagged to states which have no real history or interest in the area in which they fish. If I had a fishing vessel, I could click on the internet this afternoon and flag it to Cambodia, just for paying a few $100 perhaps. Cambodia maybe has no interest in whether its vessels are fishing responsibly in the Southern Ocean. So you can see the problem. Flag of convenience vessels and pirate vessels generally are the key drivers of seabird mortality in the world's oceans.
Current loopholes in international law allow fleets of fishing vessels to operate in this way, taking advantage of the fact that coastal waters are extremely difficult to police. They fearlessly plunder our oceans.
There are several measures that you, of course, employ to make sure that pirates don't enter your waters. Primarily, it's use of aerial surveillance and at-sea patrols by either a Coast Guard, a Navy, or the Fisheries Department's own vessels. The problem is it's a vast area to patrol. South Africa alone has 1.5 million square kilometers to patrol. We've got a fairly small EEZ, if you compare that to Australia, or the United States, for example. We've got huge economic zones, so it's looking for a needle in a haystack.
Many nations simply lack the necessary resources to prevent illegal vessels from operating in their coastal waters. Finding ways to eradicate this criminal fishing industry soon is absolutely crucial in securing the albatross's survival. Seabirds face a multitude of threats, both on land and at sea. Not only are these irreplaceable birds global assets, but also reliable ecological indicators of the health of the environment in which they live.
What is most alarming is that even once we've removed all the threats, it will still take decades for these populations to recover.
Recent reviews have shown that something over, I think it's 70% of global fish stocks are being fished unsustainably. So their ultimate fate is commercial extinction.
So in a sense, if we can't save the albatross, then we can't save the biggest global commons that we've got, which is the world's oceans.
Safeguarding the albatross is essential and will ultimately contribute to general marine conservation. In the end, the fate of the majestic albatross is inextricably linked with the future of our world's oceans, for which all nations share the responsibility. Perhaps, like the ancient mariner, we should realize that it is more than just the killing of an albatross. The real crime is the assumption of our superiority over nature.
Still gets me, you know, seeing these things lying dead like this. After spending years at sea watching them and seeing them at breeding colonies and doing their thing, to see them like this it's just sad.
There is no doubt that the remaining species of albatross can be saved. The question remains, do we have the will to take the necessary action before it's too late?